They say the beer joint lights up bright in Renton.
In Renton.
They say there's always magic in the air.
In Renton.
Yes, it's true. There's so much to see and do in Renton. Alive with excitement. No wonder people are calling it the Brothel of the South. Come see it all.
In Renton.
In Renton.
In Renton.
Renton.
In Renton.
R-E-N-T-O-N.
In Renton.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's so great to see all of you. It's so great. Thank you so much for coming down here. This is so great. Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you. And welcome. Welcome to Mohai and the almost live presentation, the opening of our exhibit. Everybody excited? Okay. All right. Since we don't have a teleprompter, and as you know, old people need teleprompters, I'm going to write down what I said here. We've come here to celebrate all of our connections to this fun, strange, and very, very Seattle thing called Almost Live. Almost Live almost went under many times, many times. We made it through a few years of getting hammered by Star Trek reruns and Ken Schramm. That was difficult. Then, when Ross surprised King TV and left to take over for Joan Rivers, would the show end there? Or would it go on? It went on. When we crashed the Space Needle, I thought, well, that's it. And as a personal aside, I thought, well, that's a pretty punk way to go out. So, anyway, when we crashed the Space Needle, I thought, well, that's it. But it wasn't. We touched a few other third rails that would have been the end of other shows. But when we were nervous about losing our jobs, we always felt the support from Seattle, the people of Seattle. And so did our bosses. So the show was kept on the air, and it kept upping its game. We stopped filming in 1999, but it played for 30 more years. And but during that time, I can remember sitting on my couch and watching the Academy Awards and hearing Robert De Niro go, and for Best Screenplay, Bob Nelson. Yeah. Bob, up for the... And then there were some brilliant shows by Joel McHale, who's here with us tonight. Yeah, he was the mean guy on The Bear. If anyone watched The Bear, Joel was the mean guy. And he's also done some questionable game shows. Anyway, and anywhere in the world, if you go with Bill Nye, if you go anywhere in the world, people will say Bill, or in China, beer. We actually saw the Chinese version of his open, and it goes, beer, 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 beer. Beer, no, no, no. Anyway, sorry, it goes on. All right. One of my favorite moments was when I had to go to New York for meetings when the show made it to Comedy Central. Walking through Manhattan, people would stop me and say, hey, you're on that show. And I'd go, yeah. And they'd go, what is Ballard? Which is, that's a very tough one to explain. And now, I would like to bring on another cast member who was able to follow her dream from Art Zone. Please welcome Nancy Guppy.
Hey, hey. Joe just booed me. Well, what a love fest. This is absolutely a thrill to have all of you here. So I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of what's happening in the next 90-ish minutes or 3 hours. We shall see. So each of us up here, along with a few folks who aren't here, have chosen a favorite sketch to show you. And by the way, it is sketch. It is not skit, just FYI. And we also have 3 highlight reels of a few memorable moments from Almost Life's 15-year history, put together by the fabulous Ralph Bevins. And those, yes. And those, where is he? There's over there. And those will be showing up throughout the evening. We're going to end our time with an audience Q&A. Hopefully you had a chance to write down and submit your burning questions. And there's that back. Okay, there's a sign back there, Q&A. Can they still sign? They can still put in they could still write a question, a burning question. You can still submit that. Finally, maybe most important, the bar will remain open until 8 and only 8. All right? So my mom and her friend Diana right here, do you guys need a glass of wine? My mom, do you need one? If you let me know, if you need a glass of wine, anyone can get it for you. And the museum will be kicking all of us out of the door by 10 p.m. sharp. So we've got a lot of ground to cover, a lot of fun ground. So back to Mr. Johnny Cat.
All right. The first person I'm going to bring up is the very first host of Almost Live. And this show could not have been done without this man. It would have been impossible. All the stuff that came after the very first show, you can lay the responsibility and the blame sometimes to Ross. Ross and I knew each other from the comedy clubs, but we knew each other in a way that we would be like, hey. We'd be like, hey. No, like that. And so, when I came onto the show with the encouragement of other people at King, and tried to sort of do some stuff, they were kind of like, well, I don't really know if this really works. But as I began to do more stuff for the show, what I realized is that there was a tremendous value in Ross having a background in sports, in competitive sports. He played at a college level of football. He was a middle linebacker, as I remember, which they say is the scariest position. Those are the guys that you want to send behind lines. Anyway, what I discovered about Ross is once he proves that you can do the job, he gets behind you 100%. And we needed somebody strong and stable like that. And in the beginning of the show, we were just trying to think of anything we could to get some eyeballs on it. And Ross, I'd love you to come up and explain what we did.
Sure, sure. Hi, everybody. Hi. Thank you. Thank you. So all of us have, we were not prepared to have anybody know what we looked like or who we were, but when Almost Live started taking off, we would get recognized in odd places. And so I was traveling a lot, and people at the airport would say, hey, you're on Almost Live, right? I go, yeah. Yeah, how'd you get a show? And I'll tell you how I got that show, because we did start out in stand-up comedy, and I happened to win this international comedy competition in Seattle, and then that led to some other things where I'm traveling and I'm doing comedy guest spots on TV. And I go to Vancouver, British Columbia, to do Alan Thicke's talk show. He was the Johnny Carson of Canada at that time. And so the word came down that Bob Jones, who's the program director at King, and my good friend Pat Cashman were looking at my tape from that show, and Pat saying, hey Bob, you know that he doesn't get too flustered when he's bombing. And they called me in to kind of have a conversation, and it went well enough that we got a pilot, and that was a very exciting thing, but we just didn't think it would ever go anywhere. So we get the show, and after the first episode, it's terrible. It's just we didn't. It was, in fact, the Seattle Times gave a little review calling us almost dead, which was that was demoralizing. But then we got a call that, hey, they want to do 13 episodes. So we do 13 episodes, and we're scrambling. We don't know what to put on the air. Like John said, he gets an idea, the Guardian Anglers. That would be a thing. People fishing for crime, you know, that kind of thing. I get an idea that I'm gonna be yuppieing with Todd, and I drive around in a car and do Todd things, whatever that would be. So, and then we'd interview whoever came through town. At the end of the first season, I didn't think we'd ever get renewed, and my agent at the time was certain we wouldn't get renewed. So I'm back on the road doing stand-up again. By the second season, we're thinking, we got to do something. We got to get some, because King's not going to help us out. They're not going to do commercials or promos for us. And so we started brainstorming. Now, I'm going to take you back just about 7 years before I got into comedy or into television. I was this young guy buying little businesses out of bankruptcy in Tacoma. You get them for nothing. And so I got this stereo store, and I named it Sounds Okay. Because I wanted to manage people's expectations of how terrible the music was. But I wasn't making enough money. So I had this idea, well, maybe it shouldn't just be a stereo store. So I also combined a stereo and pet shop and called it Woofers and Tweeters. And it took off. And then I just did more kind of promotional things like, oh, yeah, people are coming in. Let's have a hamster drag race. Oh, let's just have a jumbo jello jump. Let's do it. And it really built up. So now I'm thinking when we have Almost Live, we've got to do a publicity stunt. There's got to be something that we can do. We tried a lot of things. We tried to reunite Sonny and Cher. Cher hated him, and it was never going to happen. There were other things that we tried to, the National Dog of America, nothing worked. And then Jim Sharp, who's not here tonight, is the quiet genius of this group, who came up with the name Almost Live, said, well, maybe we should change something. Because people are politically, they don't like anything like this. Maybe we should change something in government. But we don't know anything about that. But his idea was, well, let's change the state song. Oh, okay, we could try that. But we had to research it, and there was already a state song by a woman in Spokane. A 76-year-old, Helen Davis, had written a song called Washington, My Home, Wherever You May Roam. And it was the worst song ever to have a state. So that's easy pickings. Let's go for it. It was Jim who came up with Louie Louie.
Well, we expected about 200,
This
actually.
is what happened.
Take a look at how many were really there. To our surprise and amazement, over 5,000 people showed up at the state capitol to celebrate this momentous occasion in full Louie Louie regalia. Even Governor Gardner rose to the spirit of the occasion.
And whereas I intend to get even with Ross Schaefer.
And finally, Thurston County Commissioner George Barner and his band, the original Trendsetters, put some dignity into the event. Soon they were joined by the Wailers, the Kingsmen, Paul Revere and the Raiders, who made a special trip from LA to be a part of this happening. And even the string orchestra from Ferndale High School. It was clear that Louie Louie touched a familiar chord in everyone. And I was filled with pride to be a part of the American system, where even the little guy has the freedom to make his voice heard.
Anything Dick and I can do to help your cause?
In fact, there is. I brought some sweatshirts here, some Louie Louie sweatshirts for you.
Every week we could wear these. That's
yeah.
right, sure.
So if you would wear those proudly.
I'll wear it on the Tonight Show. That's great.
There's one for you, too.
Oh, this is going to be yours. That's that or a bedspread. Wait a minute. Thank you very much. Ross Schaefer.
That wasn't bad. There was no need for that. There was no need to make that remark.
So look, here's the button on this. Thank you. Whatever goes viral is entirely up to you. There's nobody that can ever say, oh, we can make some viral campaign. That's all up to how it touches the public. And because of this, Louie Louie was in the press 256 straight days. We nationally, it was that show, it was other shows. John and I were out pitching and doing speaking events to build this thing up. We were a Dubious Achievement Award in Esquire magazine that year. But what really kicked Almost Live up a complete notch was the advertisers, the beer advertisers came out of the woodwork, car advertisers. We were flooded with people who wanted to advertise on our show, and the program director says, yeah, we'd like to accommodate them, so you're going to have to go from 30 minutes to an hour. And after an hour, that was where we had this kind of a launching pad really got us in the public mind. So thank you all for pitching in and being a part of that. John?
All right. And now we're going to go through our favorite sketches, or the ones that we picked to show you. I had a lot that I really enjoyed, but here we are. Okay. Anyway, I learned the language of film from a photographer named Mike Boydston, who was on the show. And yeah. And he said, hey, you got to go see the sequel to Alien. It's Aliens. This guy's a genius, this director. And we went and saw it, and James Cameron's version, and it was very different. Just everything was moving, a lot of kinetic stuff. And we said, I think, let's try to do something like that. And so it was the very first time that we did kind of like a mini movie, I believe. I think it was. It was one of the first times. But this one, without me knowing it, got sent to the big TV convention for what was called the Iris Awards, which was for local television, the best in the country. And this one won the Iris Award, and I was given it by Oprah Winfrey, who was just starting. She was a brand new person, and they had her host the events, so I was handed that, and she's, congratulations, and we went back to the French Quarter and practiced a lot of stuff. And so this is that piece, Alien Gumbies.
First, there was Alien. Then, Aliens. Now, the most horrifying event in motion picture history. Alien Gumbies.
I don't know, man. Wait a minute. What's that over there?
Gumbies, guts, goo, and a whole bunch of guns. Alien Gumbies. In space, no one can hear you say,
Pokey, hey Pokey, Pokey, come on, hey Pokey, Pokey, let's go for a ride. Hey Pokey.
All right. Thank you. And now, and by the way, we ate at our nose after that, where they switched the coffee, and Wilson got in trouble. Okay, so now Nancy's going to introduce her.
All righty. I have 4 things to say in 2 minutes. Almost Live was the best job ever, and that had everything to do with the people involved. Starting with host John Keister and executive producer Bill Stainton, these guys wanted us to do good work. It was never about him and their ego. We wouldn't always hit the mark, but they wanted to do the best show possible. Lord knows I didn't always hit the mark, but we were encouraged to swing for the fences. Equally important were the people behind the cameras, and we had 3 of the best. Mike Boydston, Daryl Suto, also known as Billy Kwan, and the aforementioned Ralph Bevins, AKA Jet Guy. Yes. These 3 were technical pros with great comedic minds who would take an idea that was funny on paper, visually bring it to life, and always made it funnier. Now, this was also true when we shot the show in front of a live audience. How many here went to a live taping? Yeah, great, yeah. We had an excellent in-studio crew led by our intrepid director, cast member Steve Wilson. Technically proficient with superb comedic timing, Steve knew how to capture the comedy, and he did so every single week. Last, but certainly not least, a highlight of my years on Almost Live was working with the marvelous Tracy Conway. Tracy and I share a similar sense of humor. We were not afraid to look like idiots, and still are not. And it was a joy to write and perform together. So this sketch that we are going to show you, one of our favorites, it's called New Boyfriend, and it features Tracy, myself, and the inimitable Bob Nelson. Roll tape.
Hey, pay up!
Good to see you. You look great. You look so cute. Well, here he is.
So this is Alan.
Okay, before you say anything at all, I mean, his hair is going to be totally different. This is way too 70s.
Yeah.
I mean, I want it kind of away from his face. And maybe a little longer in the back, you think?
It's nice, though.
And of course, new frames. I mean, something that doesn't make him look like such a turtle. But not too John Lennon-y.
No, that wouldn't fit his face at all.
No, round. No. Okay, clothes.
Well, obviously not these.
I'm thinking Gap. White t-shirt or a white Oxford. A straight leg jeans, black, of course. I mean, I know it's not original, but I think it'll give me a foundation to build on.
That makes perfect sense.
Okay, shoes. Oh, God, don't look at the shoes.
Boy, those are really bad.
Well, his old girlfriend worked at Mervyn's.
Say no more.
Anyway, I think I'm going to bring in some black loafers. It's clean and simple.
What about Doc Martens?
Boots or low cuts?
Definitely low cuts.
Good suggestion, I like it. I'll think about it. Okay, moving on to accessories. Maybe a pierced ear.
But not a stud. I mean, no stone.
Oh, no, a
diamond.
hoop, like a gold hoop.
Perfect. Statement without making a statement.
Exactly. Okay, as far as facial hair, I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, I like it, but it may not fit. Like maybe sideburns or the mustache going into the beard.
That's kind of hard. Although, you know, that would take care of that weak chin area. But, you know, you don't have to decide right away.
You're right. You're absolutely right, I don't. So, anyway, I guess that's about it.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay. Well, it is nice to meet you, Alan.
Isn't it great? Well, should we sit down?
Yeah. So what have you been up to? Yes.
Crazy.
All right, and now the one and only Bill Nye the Science Guy.
We love that song. Thank you, Nancy. So I started out on the show after I quit my day job, October 3rd, 1986, approximately. And I was getting parts on occasionally. I'd be in the background, I'd be a guy or this and that, but I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to create, the same reason you want to be an engineer and make stuff. So I took this seriously. Oh, really? Yeah, I did. Took it seriously. And I grew up, wanted to be an engineer. I liked airplanes. I worked at Boeing when Tex Johnston was still around, the guy who did a barrel roll with a 707 before it even had that designation. And I was fond of these guys, the tough fighter pilot, the bomber pilot. And I realized that it's important not only for the actor, the character, to have a tough guy name, but the guy who plays the character has to have a tough guy name. This was important to me. And so we have Rick Jameson. Now, Pat Cashman read the bit, and he read Rick Jameson. And I went back to him, Pat, this is really important to me. I want Rick Jameson to have 3 syllables. And okay, whatever. So, you know, it's like Clint Eastwood or Rock Hudson. You know, the guy's got to have a tough name. So here we have Captain Flanker and Jeff Dawson. Sora, roll that tape.
Last week on Flying Low.
Isn't the river beautiful, Jeff?
Sure is, sir.
That's what I love about flying low. See anything yet?
Nothing yet, Captain.
Well, I guess we'd better go lower.
All right.
Flying Low. A couple of guys who like to take chances and see the world up close. Flying Low. Starring Jason Riker as Jeff Dawson and Rick Jameson as Captain Flanker. Tonight on Flying Low. Out of the frying pan.
You okay, Jeff?
A little shaken up, sir.
Was a bit of a rough landing.
You know, Captain, I think we were flying a little low that time.
Come on, Jeff, you gotta take chances to see the world up close.
I know, but I'm scared to fly again, sir.
You gotta get right back on the horse that threw you.
Okay, but how are we gonna get out of here?
We'll take the chopper.
Oh, of course.
All right, let's go. Good to be flying again, huh, Jeff?
Sure is, Captain.
See anything yet?
Not yet. I think we're flying too high, sir.
We'll take her down a bit then.
Captain, you smell gas?
Maybe a little bit. You know, Jeff, that makes me kind of nervous. Mind if I smoke?
Not at all, sir.
Take her for a bit then.
Yes, Captain.
VHS tape, put it up there, Timothy Dalton movie, fine. And Mark Hansen, the King 5 helicopter pilot, said, I'll get you some footage. And he flew down like, it's a team sport, you guys. It was big fun.
Out of the mind of Bill Nye, the pre-science guy. Hey everybody, my name is Bill Stainton. Thank you. Thanks for coming out, and all you guys from Kent, maybe next time we can get you down here. Just keep, maybe. So, in the 15 years of the show, I mean, we all wrote pieces for the show, individual pieces, and every now and then, one of those pieces, or the characters in those pieces would kind of take on a life of its own. Yeah, we didn't anticipate it, but, you all would watch the show, and then we get, cards and letters and faxes, and, occasionally ponies would pull up to the building, and there'd be little messages on parchment and that sort of thing. And it'd be things like, hey, you know that thing you did on Saturday? Don't do that again. We didn't care for that. But the other thing we really liked, do more of that. So we ended up over 15 years with a lot of do more than that characters. The characters that kind of took on a life of their own. Here are just a few of them right now. Let's roll it.
Full court press.
Girls with no sense of humor about firecrackers.
Lame!
Lame!
Excusable.
Non-dysfunctional families.
Lame!
This sounds like a job for... capable woman.
Hi, everybody. How are you? Welcome to the restaurant. I'm your server tonight, Randy Scott. It's about 68 degrees in here, very comfortable. About 22 minutes past the hour right now.
Excuse me, I know I'm not supposed to interrupt a meeting of the ineffectual middle management suck-ups, but the north wing of the building's on fire.
Now, I think technically that would be facilities. Yes. Wouldn't it? Yeah. So you'd have to talk to Tom about that.
Well, I went to talk to Tom, but he's at the team building workshop and won't be back till Thursday.
Maybe we could fax him some information about the fire.
Fax.
Who are you?
I'm Speedwalker.
Excuse me, young lady, do you know where you are?
Kent?
That's right, and you realize you're in violation of the Kent Big Hair Ordinance? Look, all women in Kent have to have their hair teased out at least 20 inches. Oh, honey, you're way under.
Kids, be sure to tell your parents about a new album out by your favorite TV personality. It's called I'll See You in Hell, Uncle Fran's Bitter Love Song, and it's available. I can't, Uncle Fran, I feel uncomfortable doing this.
Oh, you feel uncomfortable, do you?
Yes.
Well, see if this feels uncomfortable.
Oh!
And then there's the mystery of the bottle woman, who looks astonishingly similar to Jamie Lee Curtis.
I am Jamie Lee Curtis. I don't know, some idiot.
A congenital liar from Bothell, who looks astonishingly similar to Jamie Lee Curtis.
I've never been to Bothell.
A woman who's ashamed of living in Bothell.
Come here, please.
And who looks
Get rid of him.
astonishingly similar to Jamie Lee.
How long are we going to sit here on?
Well, I'm just waiting for this guy to move, and then we got a really good parking space.
I'm hungry.
Hey, well, if we're gonna park as soon as he moves.
Just get him to move the car.
Stop, what's the matter?
Hey, move that car or my boyfriend's gonna kick your ass.
Just know that it's for, no, it's to Bob. Yeah. We're going to introing Bob. Yeah, okay, good. Oh, I thought, yeah, I didn't know what we were talking about. Okay, hey, anyway, here we are. Yeah, back. This is a rehearsal, you guys, right? We're going to be... All right, Almost Live cast member, as you can see up here, Bob Nelson was not able to be with us tonight, but Bob is here because Bob's impact on the success of Almost Live cannot be overstated at all. Bob is innately funny. He created many great sketches and characters, such as you just saw, the hilarious, bitter, and often violent kids show host, Uncle Fran of Uncle Fran's Musical Forest. In addition, Bob is a wordsmith, whether it was writing jokes for The Late Report or coming up with catchy, pithy catchphrases such as, "Get your ass in the shuttle, we're going to Tacoma." Bob crafted his comedy with incredible precision. And Bob, as John mentioned, has had an amazing career post Almost Live. His screenplay, Nebraska, directed by Alexander Payne, was nominated for an Academy Award and a Golden Globe. And Bob also wrote and directed Confirmation, starring Clive Owen. On top of all of Bob's talent, and I think I can speak for everyone on this stage, Bob is the one cast member that we all liked. Can't say that about all of us, just the facts. When I asked Bob what we should say about the sketch he chose to show you, he said, quote, "Just say something like, Bob picked this one because somebody compared it to a Monty Python sketch, and that's the compliment he'd been waiting to hear his entire life." A well-deserved compliment indeed. Let's roll that tape.
New on NBC.
Your resume is very impressive. But as you must know, like most law firms right now, we just don't need another lawyer. I'm sorry.
He was a victim of supply and demand, but now he's one of the new breed of lawyers who are taking the law into their own hands and into the streets. They're the street-walking lawyers of Aurora Avenue. There's nothing they won't do to get a case.
Oh, yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Now, you look like you could use a friend.
What are you charging?
Depends on what you need.
Uncontested divorce.
I can do that. For $50, I'll give you a consultation drive around the block. For $250, I'll stay up all night with you and do the paperwork.
Sounds fair to me.
Great. Hey, how about my friend here?
Hi.
Hi.
Ever wonder what it would be like with two lawyers?
Sure. Why not? It is.
Yes, they're sleazy, and they're lawyers, and NBC's got them. The street-walking lawyers of Aurora Avenue.
What a spectacular piece. Only a minute 15, I think, or something like that. Bob knew that brevity is the soul of wit. My name is Pat Cashman, and oh my God. Just because I know my name, I get that? That's good. Okay, so I moved to Central Oregon, which is my hometown area, a few years ago, and I drove up here today. Yeah, don't applaud yet, because I thought I was doing real well until I came to a sign that said, "Welcome to Fresno." So I turned around, came back, just got here in the nick of time. My ambitions were pretty vague when I was a youngster. This is about 12 weeks ago. And I had a dream of doing something in the arts. And I was gonna pursue that dream. And then Almost Live came around, and I had a job elsewhere at King TV. And somebody said, "Hey, if you got any bits you wanna do, or sketches, I mean, you wanna do on the show, throw them in. We might put them on the air." And so I did. And as I thought about it today, driving up from California, I realized that shows like Saturday Night Live and so many other shows, they usually began with a cadre of writers and performers that had established themselves. There were experts. There were there were guys that knew what they were doing. They were old pros. But unless I'm overlooking somebody, none of us knew anything about writing sketch comedy. So it wasn't just a job, it was like going to school. And it was the greatest school I ever got to be a part of. And I knew right then I was going to switch careers, my career dream. And I called the people up who had offered me a job, and I said, thank you very much. I'm going to stay at King TV and work on this comedy show. And that ended my dreams with the Pacific Northwest Ballet. I have no regrets about it. And I still dance around a little bit, but, and I kept the cod piece, which has come in handy, for sure. Anyway, this bit, before I get to it, everything's been kind of, I think the word is hagiographic. Everybody says nice things about the show. It's all sweetened up. Everybody got along great together. Weren't they a merry bunch? I'm going to tell you a story right now which shows you the grimy underbelly of this show. I don't think a lot of people behind me are going to be very happy about this. If it had been revealed at the time, a lot of these people would have lost their careers and some of them would have gone to jail. It's true. Here's what happened. Oh, sorry, I'm supposed to only go 2 minutes. Never mind. I did a series of these bits called Sluggy. It's about a kid who didn't have the money for a dog or a cat or a conventional pet, so he had to settle for a slug. This is not my favorite version of Sluggy, but it does make me happy because Joel McHale is in it, and my daughter. And here it is. Go ahead and roll it.
For anyone who's thrilled to the triumphant movie, Free Willy. Now comes this new film from Gastropod Pictures.
Hi, Katie. What are you doing?
Oh, hi, Daddy. I was just thinking about Sluggy. You remember him, don't you?
Of course I remember him.
I sure do miss him.
Yeah, I know.
Daddy, you said Sluggy ran away, right?
Did I?
Yeah, you did. What really happened, Dad?
Well, we needed money 2 years ago, and some men came by.
Some men came by?
Yeah.
What men, Daddy?
They ran a sideshow. They said they were looking for a great, big, giant slug.
And you sold him?
Yeah.
What's the address, Dad?
3912 2nd Avenue. But Katie, I don't think... Katie? Katie!
And an incredible adventure begins.
How much money did we make today, boss?
$47. Pretty good for one day. That slug is a cash cow. The sign says kick a slug for $1, you idiot. Get out of here.
Beat it.
Ah, welcome. Have a good time in there, girlie.
Sluggy! Oh, Sluggy! Oh, you're so big. I missed you so much, Sluggy. Oh, gotta get you out of these chains. Gotta get you out of here.
What is taking the girl so long?
I'll go check on her, boss.
Ah, here she is now. Did you have a good time?
Yeah, it was great.
All right. Why don't you go check on Gigantor and I'll count the money?
Hey, boss, Gigantor's gone!
That girl! Think they've been through here?
Yep, they've been through here.
It's life on the run in a world filled with hate.
Oh, Sluggy, I'm hungry. Let's get something to eat in this restaurant. Hey, now this one.
This is the story of a special, strange friendship. A story of a weird kind of love. But ultimately, it is a story of triumph.
Pat Cashman, Sluggy. Okay, as you can see, I'm wearing glasses because I am of that age. And, but the worst girlfriend still loves polka dots. I'm stealing this line from Julia Sweeney. I'm older and I'm wider. But I still am curvy fun. So, I'm also not a Northwest native, unlike a number of the people who are up here behind me. I actually moved here. I wasn't from Los Angeles, but I was living in Los Angeles for 4 years when I moved here. I had been failing for that entire time to make a career for myself as an actor. And I never wanted to be famous. I really, truly didn't. I wanted to be a working actor. And honestly, ever since I was a teen, I knew what I wanted to do. I was the kid that just couldn't stop playing pretend. And, you know, I loved dressing up in wild clothes and having giant hair and makeup and getting to play really crazy characters that would do and say things that I personally would never do in my own life. So, this next piece that we're going to share with you is one of the extraordinarily talented and generous Nancy Guppy's writing. She did it for the two of us, and we both got to do all of those things I just described. We had the wild hair and the clothes that we might not normally wear, and we play a pair of women who I would say are a bit different than we are, but we liked them, we cared about them, and it gave us another opportunity to do something a little bit naughty that we kind of liked to do on the show once in a while, which was smoke cigarettes. Oh, we were so bad. We were very bad girls. And related to the smoking cigarettes, again, I emphasize, I was not born here, but if it was not for Almost Live, I would never have had my second birthday, my re-birthday. Some of you may know that I actually dropped dead of cardiac arrest on our set in 1995. And if I had not been here in Seattle, the place where they developed the protocol, yeah, exactly. You can applaud Medic One. If I had not been here in our wonderful town of Seattle, I would not have been resuscitated and I would not have survived. So I truly believe all of you brought me back to life. The people behind me here, who I adore with all of my heart, try not to cry, and you, because you gave me that dream. You gave me that life that I had dreamed about since I was a kid, that I got to play all these wonderful characters. And if I had not been asked to play the woman who saw the Space Needle fall over Man, was that my lucky break. None of this would ever happen to me. So I hope you enjoy this piece that Nancy and I had such a ball doing, and thanks for giving me my life.
April 2nd, 1985. Oh yeah, I remember all right. You remember?
Oh yeah, I remember.
We were here, right?
We were here on our second picture.
Or our third.
Or our third.
And you had just gone for cigarettes.
I'd gone for cigarettes.
Huh? And when you came back, you looked frozen. And she looked frozen, you know?
I felt frozen.
So I said, you know what? What's going on?
And then I told her.
And she told me. In this totally dead voice. Say it how you said it.
I said, David Lee Roth left Van Halen.
The words, they hit like a, you know, like an earthquake.
Yeah, like the big one.
Yeah, like the big one, yeah.
Do you remember what I did then? You remember?
Yeah, No, what?
I switched my brand of cigarettes. Right then, do you remember?
That's right. That's right, she did.
I made a statement.
You made a statement. See, it's like BC and AD. You know, there's BC smokes and there's AD smokes. These are AD smokes.
After Dave.
Remember the song Jump?
Do I remember it?
I know you remember it.
Yeah, do you remember
I
it?
remember it. Hey you! What's that?
Whoa, baby, how do you feel?
Go ahead! Jump! Woo! Jump! God. You know how he would sing Jump and he jumped at the same time?
Oh man, yeah. But you know, he jumped in other songs too.
You're right. She's right. He jumped when he sang Jump, but he jumped when he sang other songs too. So.
He was known for jumping.
Yeah, he jumped a lot.
Hell of a lot.
Damn right. Sammy Hagar cannot jump.
Who?
We don't acknowledge Sammy Hagar.
He sucks.
And he's a kiss-ass.
Total kiss-ass.
David Lee Roth is not a kiss-ass.
Damn right.
Damn right.
You know, David Lee Roth, he didn't care what other people thought.
I mean, he had a perm.
So what?
Exactly. He was his own man.
Absolutely.
Damn right.
Yeah, maybe it was a home perm.
Might have been a home perm.
And doesn't matter, because it was a good perm.
Hell yes, it was.
Damn right.
Damn right. April 2nd, 1985. It's the day the music died.
Up and died.
Yep. Up and died.
Why don't you jump?
Jump.
Well, gosh, I think if we've learned anything so far tonight, it's that the one word that best describes Almost Live's particular brand of humor is cerebral. I think we can it's a thinking person's type of humor. You get it, right? Every now and then, though, we would want to flex a little bit and try some different approaches to humor. Some might call it physical comedy. Some might call it slapstick. Some might call it light violence. But at Almost Live, light violence wasn't just a slogan. It was a way of life. And don't just take my word for it. We actually have a montage here that'll show you what I mean. Let's roll this.
Hey, everybody. Wow, everyone is very old and white. It's like a Trump rally out here, so thank you so much for everybody coming tonight. Yeah, no, too soon. So, I want to say that when I was in the 90s, I was a young pup, and I watched Almost Live all through the 80s, and I didn't meet the great Mr. Ross Schaefer until just last year, and my mom, Lori McHale, right here, told me to get an internship on that show, you fucking lazy ass, and go do something. And I applied for an internship on Almost Live and on Pat Cashman's radio show. And when I turned Pat Cashman down and said, I'm doing the Almost Live internship, he let me do his radio show after that. And it was the greatest thing that has happened for me, because my dyslexic, nervous ass got to be on television with the kindest people on the planet who took care of me and let me write stupid sketches, and often would go, yeah, no, that's, it's funny, but we're gonna go with one that Bob wrote. And that happened almost every week. And I look at this experience as one of the greatest of my life, and I can't believe that we're all here, and they brought out the Almost Live Hydro that we hand-built, and of course the float plane that we used in multiple sketches, and then of course, what museum is not complete in Seattle without a man-made tree, because there's not enough trees around here to have a normal tree inside of a museum. So I can't thank you guys enough, and it's just so cool this is all happening. And so this sketch was written by Nancy? No? Okay, well, no, it's called Ernie and Lenny. I don't know how many of you guys saw it, but it was one of those sketches that I got to be in with Pat and Steve, speaking of lame list, and Steve's okay, everybody, and he'll get up here in a sec, but I got to be in one of these sketches where I got to be on TV, and it gave me all the confidence in the world. So thank you, guys, and here we go.
Hey, Lenny, what are you thinking about?
You ever wondered what a gun like this could do to somebody, Ernie?
Hey, Lenny, have you ever...
Have I ever what?
You know, have you ever...
Have I ever trapped a man in an alley, pinned him against a wall, and then gotten right up into his face and said, you are a very special person, a bright light in the universe, and then given him $5 and told him to pass the love along by doing something nice for a fellow human being? Have I ever done that?
Yeah, you done that?
What do you think?
Oh, I think you've done it. I know you've done it, Lenny. You've done it, haven't you?
Let's take a little walk.
Okay. Oh, Lenny, what are you gonna do, man?
Shut up.
What are you gonna do, huh?
Shut up.
What are you gonna do, man? Huh, Lenny?
Here comes someone.
Hey, look, man, I don't want any trouble. If it's money you want, just take it. Just please don't hurt me. I'm begging you.
Do you know that you're a very special person? A beautiful light in the universe and a cherished part of this miracle we call life?
It's awfully nice of you to say.
Now, I want you to take this $5 bill, and the next person you meet, I want you to pass the love along by doing something nice for them.
Sure. Okay. I gotta get going. I'll see ya.
Oh, man, you did it, man! You just walked right up to him, man!
Shut up!
Oh, you weren't scared at all! Oh, you just walked right up to him and you said...
Shut up! I gotta think! Now, how much money we got left?
$20.
Okay, that's enough for 4 more.
Yeah, 4 more, man! Let's get them!
Shut up, come on.
Oh, you the man, Lenny! Shut up! Oh, whatever you say, you're the man!
I say shut up!
Okay, that's I was just saying that.
Shut up!
Okay, I'm shutting up now!
Just shut up! Stop saying you're gonna shut up and shut up!
Okay, well, if you say to me, hey, Ernie, shut up, that's exactly what I'm gonna do!
Shut up, Ernie!
Okay, Lenny!
Stop saying okay, Lenny! Just
Okay, okay, Lenny.
But you shut up! Well, as I said earlier, that my primary job on the show, I'm Bill Staten again. My primary job on the show was that of producer. But due to a number of clerical errors that happened early on, I was also a writer for the show and in the cast, actually. I was actually in some pieces. And every now and then, these folks would actually let me write something for the show. Yeah, I think it was part of the affirmative action program we had going. But every now and then, one would get on the air, and there were, because every now and then, you know, I would come up with something that was good. There was that one time, you remember that, and then there was that other time. This is the other time. I kind of like this sketch because one of the few times I've actually enjoyed one of my performances on TV, but I really like John's performance in this piece. Let's watch it.
Have you seen The Crying Game yet?
Oh, yeah. Man, was I surprised. I was as surprised as a guy who's really surprised at a surprising movie.
Yeah, well, how's everything going to work?
Busy. I am as busy as a guy who's really, really busy.
Somebody has got to do something about Alan.
Yeah, but who?
Tom, you're his best friend. You go talk to him.
Hey, Alan. How you doing?
Oh, great, Tom. I'm doing as good as a guy who's doing really good.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Alan, to put it bluntly, your similes suck.
Similes? What's that, Tom?
You know a simile? A comparison of two things using like or as a connector?
Wow. And mine suck.
Big time. That's why I think you need to sign up for Simile School.
Simile School? Who do I call?
Well, it's all on this matchbook. And good luck.
Thanks, Tom. You know, I feel lucky now. I feel as lucky as a guy who's really, really lucky.
Just give him a call.
All right, now everyone now. Busy as a bee.
Busy as a bee.
Very good. Now let's try something new here. Slippery as what? Marcia.
A bee?
No, not a bee this time. Does anyone else have any ideas here? Alan, what about you?
Slippery as a really slippery thing.
All right, but Alan, can you actually think of something that is very slippery?
A pair of slippers?
Well, all right, but they're not really slippery, are they? I mean, they're just called that, right? All right, Alan, try this. What looks like a snake but lives in the water?
An eel!
That's right. And is an eel rough?
No! No, it's slippery!
Sure. So you could say that something that's slippery is slippery as...
As slippery as a really slippery eel!
It's close enough.
Dear Mom, hi, how are you? I am fine. Things are going really well here at Simile School, although sometimes I feel like I'm really slow. As slow as a guy who's really... As slow as molasses. That's really slow.
So, Alan, what do you think about the new Sonics Forward? Pretty quick guy, huh?
Oh, I'll say he's quick. He's as quick as... He's as quick as a bunny. Thanks, Simile School.
Don't be embarrassed any longer. Call Simile School. It's as close as a school that's really close to you. Simile School, not affiliated with the Metaphor Institute of America. Call today.
One of my favorite bits. That is one of my absolute favorite bits. I am Steve Wilson, and I just want to say that I know everybody here has family, and these people are my family. I love them all. It's great to have a family reunion. It's so nice for Mohai to host this event, and what I want to say before I start blubbering is you should all join Mohai. You should go over there and join, because everybody should be a member of this place because it's so great. I went to Mohai when I was a kid all the time. So please join Mohai and support them. I forgot what I was going to say, so it doesn't matter. Oh, let me just say this. It's an Achilles, okay? I did it last week, so don't anybody ask me how'd you do that. I fell. It's what old people do, so. Okay, so we talked earlier about all the reoccurring bits we had, like Billy Kwan, Uncle Fran's Musical Forest, Speedwalker, Worst Girlfriend in the World. But early in 1989, an idea was pitched, not by me, I had nothing to do with it, but I think it was Bill and Ed Wyatt got together, and from what I heard, it was after Super Bowl weekend where they were watching these Michelob commercials, and someone said, "Do you see these ads? It's nothing but white guys doing white guy stuff, you know. They're playing tennis and they're playing football, they're bar hopping, and they're always high-fiving. And so it's like there's a shot, in every shot they're always high-fiving. And then here's the pitch, and I don't even know who made the pitch. Hey, wouldn't it be funny if we just had a bunch of entitled white guys doing nothing but running around high-fiving each other? And 2 days later, we were shooting it. So there's no beginning, there's no arc, there's no jokes really, except for the narration by John in the original episode. And he says, quote, "They're young, they're cool, they're from wealthy families, and they're financially secure. And in a few years, they'll be running big business and the government. They're the high-fiving white guys." So that first bit was very short. It only lasted 1:15. And over the years, we did 16 episodes of it. We went to various locations around town. We were always enlisting people to do silly things on camera or say a line that made little sense. But throughout, we kept the same stupid premise, and that is, we had that same great music, which was Hip to Be Square by Huey Lewis and the News. And it was just loud guys having stupid fun and high-fiving. And the reason I chose this bit is because I'm sort of the Mo Howard of the high-fiving white guys. Other white guys came and went, but I got callbacks for all 16. So, without any further ado, here are the high-fiving white guys.
White guys.
Can I get a high five too? Sure!
High-fiving white guys! All right!
Like I said, cerebral. So, so we get to be up on stage, but there were a lot more people than us involved with making Almost Live. Thank goodness, because we have very limited talent. There were a lot of people with far more talent than us behind the scenes working on the show. A lot of you are out there in the audience right now. Why, you may be sitting next to one. You might. So anybody out there in the audience who ever worked with Almost Live as a crew member, a cast member, a staff member, an intern, would you please, if you're able, stand up and be recognized and or blamed? There we go, Scott Schaefer, Hans Erik, gosh, man, look at that. Okay, sit down now, sit down, that's enough. So earlier we showed you a montage of some of your favorite pieces, and hopefully you've enjoyed some of these as well. There are certain pieces that when Mohai came to us and said we might want to do this thing, and we thought, okay, well, that sounds kind of cool. You know, we kind of talked among ourselves because we all kind of have our little secret stash of favorite pieces throughout the years. You know, some of them are quirky, some of them are just personal favorites. Some of them, well, I don't know. Anyhow, we put them into our final little montage. I want you all to see what kind of made us laugh, and hopefully it'll make you laugh too. Let's roll that.
Welcome to the Ballard Driving Academy.
Thank you.
All right, now before we start, please adjust your seatbelt. Okay, good. Now check your left turn signal. Okay, now leave that on all day. Make sure that never goes off. Okay. All right?
Green River Dance.
Get a bald guy, hook him up. Stick on the hoop with a suction cup. Bald guy, watch him run. Into the hoop and watch the fun. Hoop that man alive. Inside comes a monkey high.
What do you think looks better on me? Just like this or like that? Like this? The way I look like this? Or...
Like that, definitely.
Really? Okay.
Down on the left.
Gotta go bigger.
It's beautiful, Mr. Chuck.
You know, Jimmy, it's at times like this that I realize how powerful and majestic nature really is. Watch this.
We are the Trash Factoria.
Our colors flash in Factoria.
Throw up that stage in Factoria.
We all get smashed in Factoria.
But the East Side wasn't big enough for the both of them.
Hey, Trash, this mall is our turf.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah?
It's East Side Story.
Yes, Bag-O Urine is the safe, natural toy that both kids and adults will enjoy. You can punch it, kick it, but be careful.
Oh, no, urine!
Hi, this is Dave Grohl from Nirvana. Come to the Rockstar Fantasy Camp and you too can learn the tricks of the rock and roll trade. Okay, so you take the stick and between these two fingers right here and you spin. Okay.
Sorry.
We're not bluffing! No kidding! So
shake your big fat bottom down here, PDQ, because I swear if you dawdle things around, you'll be SOL, because we're closing forever. Any day now, could be a matter of weeks, days, maybe tomorrow, but then, that's it. Roscoe's Oriental Rug Emporium, going out of business since 1957.
All right. Okay. All right, and I want to. It's time for you to bring the questions from the audience up here. But while we're here basking in the glow of that last montage, I want to recognize Ralph Bevins over here, who edited the montages together. Ralph, there he is, right there. Yeah, Ralph was the editor. We'd go into the editing booth with Ralph, and one of the interesting things about Ralph is that he had taken a lot of spiritual training before he came to King, and that allowed, there was never any arguments. He existed on this plane where there were never any disagreements or arguments. Okay, well, anyway. Another thing in the montage that you saw a little bit of was that we used to cause a lot of havoc in the building itself, in the King building itself. And part of that was that we would have, we'd invite, for example, we did a parody of Miami Vice called Ballard Vice. You might remember that one, yeah. And Ross and I would drive around in Ross's cars, and then Ferrari, Porsche, whatever. Anyway, we would also do a lot of sequences where people would run around with guns, and we had the Seahawks. They really wanted to be on Ballard Vice, the Seahawks.
What you're talking?
Yeah.
Is there a mic? Yeah. So we were so innocent when we started. We took over. Nobody knew about this show. So what John's talking about is that we would get guns and run around through Nordstrom.
Yeah. Yeah.
We never got a permit for anywhere we went, and nobody said a word to us.
Right. And one of the and so when people would see that we had guns, this behavior would start where I went to buy, I was buying a car, and the salesman said, "Hey, listen, I know you guys use guns on the show. My wife wants me to get this out of the house," or there'd be another thing. So we had an Israeli Uzi that had the firing pin taken out, but it was a real Israeli Uzi. We had an M16, we had a couple rifles, and I forget which pistol we had, but they were real guns. They had been defanged, but they were real. And so one time we had the Seahawks running around the atrium at King, and a bunch of large men with guns running around without any advance warning caused a little bit of a stir at King, but yes, a little bit. However, the biggest payback for all of that was a few years after we had been canceled, and I got a phone call, and it was from Mike Boydston, who has been mentioned a few times here, and he said, "Hey, did you guys have a bunch of guns, like real guns?" And I said, "Yeah. What'd you do with it?" I said, "Well, what were they?" And I described them, and he said, "Oh, okay, yeah. Why?" He says, "Well, the station is locked down because we found this cache of guns." And I was no, that's all right. Tell
John,
him.
there is an addendum to this. So imagine this little show that has no office, and we're running around all throughout King Television with these guns and large Seahawks bearing guns, and not one time did our own news department say, hey, wait, are you?
Yeah.
Are those real? Are
Right.
you? Why do you? No, instead they look at you and go, "Hey, do you guys have any of those 5x7 index cards? We're out in news."
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to answer some of the questions that you guys put forward, but first I'm going to have Tracy Conway give some thank yous in the way that they should be done.
Thank you, John. So, everybody having a good time here tonight? Yeah. I know that's a common question to ask, but I mean, come on. They have put on a fabulous party and event for you. And for us. So putting this exhibit that you've seen, if you haven't seen it yet, don't leave the building without going up and checking out the exhibit. It is so cool. You can even play, is it pike or pine? You have the opportunity. Just make sure you head upstairs. Putting it together, as the expression goes, took a village of mega-talented people at MoHi, including Julie, Tracy, Kelsey, and I hope I'm saying your name right, my dear, Deborah. We all, yeah, give applause for them. We also want to thank the MoHi staff who were instrumental in tonight's event, particularly the planning team of Rachel, Sora, Ian, Christine, Carrie, Felicia, Allie, and Milana. Thanks you so much, MoHi team. Finally, and most importantly, we want to thank and acknowledge the tenacious and visionary woman who is responsible for making Almost Live, Almost an Exhibit a reality, and that would be Clara Berg. Clara! Clara, come up. Where are you, Clara? Come on, come up. Right now.
Come on up, Clara.
Yes, 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 yes. Yes, yes. She's even wearing her shoes that are based on, oh my gosh, look at this. We love you, Clara. Miss Amazing. Use the stairs. Or not. Or not. Thank you, Clara. Okay. So we're moving on now to Q&A. Bill?
I'm told, by the way, that because we've gone a little long here tonight, we will only be able to do questions. All right.
All right, so we have not looked at these yet, so we'll just we're just going to pull them out, read the question, and then I'll, just pick somebody to answer it. Oh, this is a long one. Too many words. Too many words. What was your favorite? Okay, we did one of our recurring bits was called Cops in wherever, Wallingford, Ballard, Kent, whatever. Leavenworth. Yeah, this is not the dialogue portion of the show, but still. But yes, we did Leavenworth, so kudos to you. What was your favorite Cops in sketch? So which one of those was your favorite and why? John, I'm going to let you
Yeah, I think I would say probably the first one. Actually, the first one was Mercer Island, and it involved a lot of fake Evian water and tennis infractions and as I remember when you were arrested, you have the right to remain silent. However, if you need a lawyer, we'll go over to the country club over there and grab one. You have the right to a latte. You have the right, it was all, that kind of stuff. And the one that we followed it up with was the one in Kent, which I thought that you saw a segment of. But I really think that the first one and the second one were the best. Yeah.
Yeah, Ballard was solid too. Yeah, there were some. We like them all. They all go up on the refrigerator. We don't know. By the way, I just want to point out that Tracy's earring just broke, and earlier in the green room, she told us there's some history to those earrings, Tracy.
These are my original worst girlfriend earrings, so they are fragile and old. like some of us. So.
All right, well, I know who's going to take this question. How many takes did it take for Pat Cashman to do the Rug Emporium? Oh, sorry, they wrote skits, so we're not going to do that question. Pat, you want to?
Steve Wilson directed that from the booth. I did one take, not because it was so perfect, but because I was completely spent. Steve can attest that I was sweating like a hog. I fell on the ground and I couldn't go on. I was just shocked. I would have had to take another week before we could have done another take.
Before you started that, I've told this many times, I said, okay, you read through it once, and I said, okay, you're going to go from 1 to 10, and you should, on this line, you should be at 2 and 3 and 4. And when I looked at my script, you were at 10 by number 3. And I thought, he's never going to make this. And
well, I knew of that, and I thought, what am I going to do? I just got to keep going here. A trained professional would know how to modulate their voice and breathe properly. I didn't. I just went at it, and luckily we got it on the first take because I was nearly deceived. By the way, I just found out that on our exhibit up here, on a rotating basis, each of the cast members for like 3 weeks each will be lying in state, right up there. Starting with me.
That must have been very funny. I missed it. Oh, is it? That was about, okay, that's very funny. All right, Seattle has been going through some stuff since you've been gone. Coincidence? I think we're going to hold off on that because we have one last piece to show you a little later on, which I think kind of might take care of that. So, how did you get the Lame List started, and how was working with the bands, especially Soundgarden? Before I don't know who should take this, but I will tell you one thing. Okay, John should, but anytime you saw a Lame List, it was because something else wasn't working. It's because that was the easiest piece for us to throw together. We didn't have to shoot any more video, we just had to write a few jokes. So usually what would happen is like, in the afternoon on Saturday, one of the other pieces that we've been working on all week, just like, oh, this sucks. This is just, okay, but we got to fill the space. So let's do another Lame List. So we did. So that's how, that's why.
And I was, before I came to Almost Live, worked at the Rocket magazine, and one of our editors / reviewers was a guy named Jeff Gilbert, who donated is Jeff here? Anyway, he donated the Rockstar Fantasy Camp and the leather jacket, and Jeff was always, he was the guy that whenever there was heavy metal groups around, there somehow was always Jeff. And so I just said, Jeff, just, get the hairiest guys that you can find, and we'll do this bit. And we just, brought them out, and they just did this, lame many times. And the photographers who shot that, it was shot a couple of times, said that with the hair, when they would get in the middle and the hair would come down, that it would be this aroma of beer and like just, Jägermeister and just party funk, that would just, come down on them. But usually it was a collaboration of all of the groups. But one time we did an entire, just all of Soundgarden, and one time we did all of Grunt Truck, which was at one point The Accused, and we did Goodness, the band Goodness. So there you go.
Going through these questions, you guys clearly need a break. This is some weird, why does Bellevue suck so much? I just think that's self-apparent. Well, here's one. Do you claim credit for Joel McHale? That must be a question for you, Joel.
Do I claim credit? I want to say the most shocking news of the night is that Ross Shafer owned a Ferrari in the 80s, and clearly King 5 was paying him enough to own a Ferrari. That's incredible.
Yeah, that was a sweet Ferrari, Ross.
We needed it for Ballard Vice.
So was it a write-off? Was it a tax dodge?
It was, but first of all, King did not pay me that much money. But I had a radio show on KJR that was in the afternoon drive, and I had this war with Gary Lockwood in the morning, and we created these fake feuds. And the more our ratings came up, the more they paid me, and I bought the Ferrari.
Okay. Oh man, this is one we used to get all the time because we were just on once a week. Okay, so after the show, what do you guys do the rest of the week? Do you have day jobs? Nancy, why don't you take that one?
Yeah, that's right. Basically, we wrote for about an hour, and then we just kind of put the show together. No, it was a very intense job. I mean, it was super, super fun. But we would come in, I think, on what was it, Tuesday, right? Come in Tuesday. We'd probably have a pitch meeting, I'm guessing, and we would go around and pitch stuff. We'd figure out what the live bit was going to be that week. Usually a game show or whatever, a talk show. We'd start writing to that. We'd write on the late report jokes. And then we were shooting, of course, the whole week, and there's editing going on, and we'd be sitting, if it was your piece, you'd be sitting with perhaps the editor, like Ralph Bevins. So it was a very intense process, and it was fun and it looked fun, but like anything, it was a ton of work. So that's what we were doing the rest of our week. Yeah.
Cool. Sorry. Yeah, we're just looking at these things. Okay, oh, this is an interesting one. This must come from one of you who actually worked on the show. What was the worst behind-the-scenes fight about? About material, Steve's urine sketch? I'm not sure how that relates to that, but Bill, why don't you take this one? What was the worst fight that you ever had?
The worst fight I ever had the most heartbreaking moment of my life was, so there's a classic demonstration, some of you may reproduce it with your plastic water bottles, where you boil water in, traditionally you do it in a paint thinner can, a thin metal can. You can do the same thing with aluminum beer can. And then you get it cold, and the water vapor turns to a liquid, and the can is crushed by atmospheric pressure, as if being crushed by a giant's fist. So I was going to do this with an oil drum. Cool. It did not collapse. It was just where it was on almost live television, and I was trying to wang on it, trying to create some instability in the cylinder. So that was rough. That wasn't really a fight. It was just.
Let me say that this is kind of typical. We did this in rehearsal. We heated up the thing, and he put the bung in the bung hole, and he closed it up. That's the hole at the end there. And then we sprayed it with a giant fire extinguisher to cool it off. Yeah. And he tapped it, and it went boom, like that in rehearsal. Now, my tradition is to record all rehearsals. And so, this particular show was a live show. Not all of them were live, we taped them. So we went to break, and I said to my tape operator, get the rehearsal tape, find out where it actually worked, because he went to break just hammering on this thing, because he went to he brought a used barrel to rehearsal, and he got a brand spanking new one. It was all painted, and really, it's like it didn't work because it was strong. The one in rehearsal was weak, and so basically, we got it up, we rolled it, and said, look, it actually happened at rehearsal. So we did save the day on that.
Thank you. And you would say, Bill, what did you learn from that? I don't think I learned anything.
And I'd like to point out, by the way, that one time the science guy was going to be me jumping off the roof of King into one of those big air, cushion type things that people do, daredevil type things, And I said, no, because like way too many reporters and like for shows like Evening and stuff like that, there's always people, he's never done that before, when they're mauled by a tiger or, and yeah, it always, I don't know what happened, Penny Legate went up for tandem skydiving once, tandem hang gliding. This thing's all edited, and then the guy died with a hang gliding accident. And so we're like, well, what are we gonna do with that? You know, a sad footnote to the story. You know. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so I think we have time for two more. Ross, I want you to handle this. What was the process for your sketch writing? Because you were one of the most prolific sketch writers. Back in the very first days, we would have these horrible, odious things called pitch meetings. Hopefully you'll never have to endure one of these. They were where you all sit around the table and you pitch the hilarious things that you've been working on all week to completely blank faces. You know, the other writers just hate it. But it would always be like, oh, I've got this idea, I've got this idea. And Ross would always come in, I've got these 18 ideas. And so he was just a sketch writing machine. So Ross, did you have a process for sketch writing?
I was so obsessed with comedy. Writing jokes was really an obsession for me for my stand-up. But then when we started doing sketches, we had, in those days, an interview every week, but we had to fill it up with other sketches. And we had a very skinny staff to do that. So I just thought, oh, there should be a beginning, and then the end has to be phenomenal. We have to really, because all of us would watch Saturday Night Live, and we'd think, God, they never have an ending on these sketches. They seem to go, and then they dribble out. And we would score them between it. Is this an A bit? Is it B bit? Is it C? And so that was kind of my thing. Where's the big kaboom ending? That was kind of what it was. And then, if you remember the Uncle Buzz sketch that Pat would do, he was a really blasphemous kitty host, where he would put real motor oil in his hair, and I wrote it, but I wasn't going to do it. Yeah, let's get the dumb guy to do it, and Pat just killed it every single time. So that, I think the volume, we needed so much volume to fill in the time. And John's process was very unusual. John in the first year, sometimes John would come to meetings, other times he wouldn't. And he would come in with something on a napkin. There was no structure to his writing, but he would say, yeah, I was having some drinks at this bar, and then, so this guy goes in, and then you know how he is with his hair, and he can't fumble, he can't find his keys. And so then we get some like machinery involved, which he sometimes. What do you think about that? and we were so desperate for material. We said, you should do that.
Yeah. And I'd come home and I'd say, they don't know what the hell, they don't know what they're doing. I tried to explain it.
You can't. John can't explain it, but he can live it. And every time he brought something in, we had to put it on because it was gold. His mind is the only thing that can distill it into something funny. But if you ask him to explain it or to write it out, you're not going to get it. But it was genius. It was just genius.
All right. One last question here. I think it's a good one to close out this portion of the Q&A. How does it feel to have a legacy that includes national broadcast and a museum exhibit? That's pretty cool. John, I think that should be yours.
Well, it feels pretty damn good. It feels very good. Like I said, I worked for the Rocket, and I worked in print. Before I got a random phone call that came into the Rocket, and I got on television. But in print, I was coming up against kind of the limits of how much I could write. I could write full-page articles, but I couldn't go much farther than that. And I wanted to break into magazines, national magazines, but I couldn't quite get over that hump. And when I got into television and understood the language of how that went, it was like I'd been waiting my whole life to write in that language. And I thought, you know, there's no limit to how far I can go, we can go, that this show can, there is no limit. And I do remember at Ed Wyatt's bachelor party at the Washington Athletic Club that it just came at this time when we had just put up a bunch of really good shows, and SNL was having a real difficult time. And I said, you know, I don't think we're just doing the best show in our, you know, in this city. I think we're doing the best show. I think we're doing the best show in the world. I think we're doing the best sketch comedy right now of anyone. And I really believed that. And I said, you know, there's got to be a future. I know we can get there. I know we can get there. And when we got to Comedy Central, the only other show, local show that had ever done that was Mystery Science Theater 3000, which came out of Minneapolis, which weirdly there's some kinship between Minneapolis and Seattle. There's something in the water there. Too many Scandinavians. I don't know, but it I'm so thrilled that we have this exhibit, and I'm so thrilled. The thing I will tell you that thrills me the very most, which is if I'm walking down the street and someone comes up to me and there's a very specific thing, it's happened several times. They'll say, you know, when I was growing up, Almost Live was the one time that my parents would let us stay up and watch television. And they frequently would also say that it was really the only time I remember when everybody in the family was happy together watching that. And that, yeah. And that, you know, and I just, you know, I remember watching, you know, this Saturday night with Carol Burnett and All in the Family and Mary Tyler Moore and all that, you know, all that kind of stuff, and just how we'd be together, you know, as a family. And the idea that we were creating that in, you know, in our viewing area was, it was just, it really, that one I thought was wonderful. We're going to, I want to set up, we have one more piece to show you. And this piece came out of, I believe that most of us, I think, had an inkling that the last season was going to be the last season, season 15. And so we thought, well, what should the opening bit be for this, what will probably be the last season? And we all worked on the lyrics of this particular song that you're about to see. And I like the work that was done on the writing. I really love that it came out of nowhere, like that if you're watching television, it just came out of you know, there was no introduction, it just started. And it's sung by Bob Nelson, who we all, you know, unfortunately he couldn't make it here tonight, but as Nancy said, he's the only one that we all liked. And when we'd come in on Tuesday for the writers' meeting, all of us would be, wonder what Bob's come up with, because that was always exciting. And so this is this will be the final tape piece for tonight.
Come gather around Seattleites wherever you are. And stuck in 520, get out of your cars and admit what they're saying in Wallingford bars. Our lifestyle is fading, and the most livable city is now a parking lot for the town. It is a changing. The food giant's gone, bid the doghouse adieu. And Frederick and Nelson, it's history too. Man, we've got lots of tullies and bagels to chew. And there's pesto and sun-dried tomato. And you just wash it down with a peach microbrew. For the town, it is a change. Come Wolfgang Puck, Gameworks, U2 Nike Town. Planet Hollywood has props from lame movies around. And don't worry that Ivor is spinning in the ground. Cause that Lake Union Hooters is amazing. Yeah, you can eat while staring at brass biggest mounds. For the town, it is a changin'. The yuppies are taking ballot, they now think it's cool. And they're kicking out the old bots who drive slow and drool. And they're pushing house prices right through the roof. And it's suburban sprawl it's creating. With strip malls so ugly they make Linwood look good. For the town, it is a changin'. Now almost life's been on for 14 long years. The high-five and white guys have all lost their hair. And Bill Nye and Ross Shaper, they're both millionaires. But the rest of us sure aren't complaining, cause we get to make fun of Kent on the air. For the show, it ain't a changin'.